Good morning. This is a presentation on the Science City model for the Philippines, describing, evaluating, and strategizing transformative urban development. And this is an NRCP project belonging to the Research and Development Priority Area, National Integrated Basic Research Agenda Sector, S&T policy. My name is Segundo Romero. I'm with the Development Studies Program, School of Social Sciences of the Ateneo de Manila University. First, the background and rationale of the project. In 2017, Congressman Erico Aristotle Aumentado of the 2nd District of Bohol drafted and filed a bill to convert the first-class municipality of Ubay into a component city and be recognized as the Science City of Ubay, which envisions Ubay to become the Science Techno-Hub Center of Bohol. And this is House Bill 6123 in 2017. In 2019, Congressman Aumentado proposed to file a revised version of this bill. He arranged for the National Research Council of the Philippines to conduct a feasibility study on the proposal. So we were contracted by NDCP to do a feasibility study on this Science City project for Ubay. And the project objectives are A, to advance more evidence-based learning from the experience of the Science City of Muñoz and Nueva Ecija, innovative and inclusive policymaking towards transforming the municipality of Ubay into a science city, and B, determine the socioeconomic and political merits, feasibility, and possible alternatives to the proposal with relevant stakeholders at the national and local levels, government, private sector, civil society, and affected communities. The projected long-term impacts of the project are to increase motivation, capabilities, and opportunities for multi-stakeholder collaboration in S&T policy development, to promote use of such S&T to enable inclusive development, security, and governance among local governments, particularly in the municipality of Ubay and adjoining municipalities in the 2nd District of Bohol, increase the number of scientists per 100,000 population in Central Visayas, and increase the local government performance management system scores and outcomes of Ubay. The sites of implementation are the base station being the municipality of Ubay in the 2nd District of Bohol, and other sites identified are the Science City of Muñoz, Nueva Ecija, and the de facto Science City of Los Baños. The plan methodology included review of related literature and documents, potential science city profiling of and stakeholder mapping in Ubay, learning visit of key LGU officials and business and civic leaders from Ubay to the Science City of Muñoz, multi-stakeholder orientation and workshops, that is government, private sector, civil society, and affected communities, municipality and district level orientation workshop, a multi-stakeholder survey and scenario building workshop, a multi-stakeholder science city outcome mapping planning workshop, and a multi-stakeholder validation workshop. Now, because of the pandemic, we had to have adjustments in the actual methodology. The pandemic conditions allowed only one field visit to Ubay to conduct multi-stakeholder orientation workshop. The 2nd and 3rd workshops substituted with key informant interviews by locally hired team members in Ubay and Muñoz, and focus group discussions with Ubay and Munoz resource persons via online mode. The enhanced document-based research, Manila and field sites via local research teams were also undertaken. And the conduct of the project team activities were primarily via online mode. We formulated a more specific set of questions, and we had 7 of them to guide our research. First question was, is the proposal to transform the municipality of Ubay and Bohol consistent with the national strategy for promoting science and technology through systemic, structural, and legal changes in local governance? Second, does the municipality of Ubay have the minimum legal requirements and the basic physical, sociocultural, and economic foundations to be a science city? Third, will a science city status be responsive to the long-term needs of the people of Ubay? 4, will science city status for Ubay be beneficial to the province of Bohol and consequently Region 7 as a whole? 5, what can go wrong in the conversion of Ubay into a science city, and how can these risks be avoided? 6, what development and governance strategies are needed to be undertaken at the municipality, district, provincial, and/or regional levels to pursue and actualize the vision of Ubay as a science city? 7, what policies and programs are required of key national, regional, and provincial agencies to support and actualize the science city of Ubay? So these research questions were, in a way, an expansion of the basic feasibility question that was asked, because we wanted to be able to not only answer a yes or no question whether it is feasible to make Ubay into a science city, but we also wanted to use this study as a way of coming up with recommendations and strategies and initiatives and innovations that the municipal government and the provincial government can use to drive the municipality of Ubay and Bohol province into a situation where science and technology are used as instruments of development. So in a way, this is an expansion, deliberate expansion of our scope, but basically to be able to generate more data that will be useful in the Science City of Ubay project. And first we looked at the models of science cities in the world, and we found out that basically there are 4 general models, of which we have some empirical reference here: the Guangzhou Science City in China, then the Tsukuba Science City in Japan, the Daejeok Innopolis, formerly known as the Daejeok Science Town in South Korea, and the Akademgorodok in Russia. And we have here a comparison of the context, the purpose, and the features, and we find out that these science cities really there are difference in Guangzhou. The idea was to accelerate Guangzhou industrial structure adjustment. In the case of Tsukuba, the idea was to sustain the urban growth of the capital region. In Korea, they meant to help improve the improvement of technological standards. And in Russia, the idea was to provide an environment for a new generation of scientists. And then here we have features, what are the facilities that are in each of these. And on the basis of this survey of the models, we identified characteristics and success factors for science cities. These are science and technology and innovation-oriented government policies and ordinances. That is very important. Provision of funds and financial support, availability of premises and infrastructure, presence of community facilities and services, strong science base and skilled workforce, commercialization of innovations, encouraging research environment, an extensive network of universities, laboratories, corporations, and other research institutions, a full range of professionals, scientists, researchers, engineers, etc., collaboration between the government, academia, and industry, and flexibility to deal with political, technological, and economic changes. So those are the 11 characteristics and success factors we thought a science city need to be sustainable over the long term. Now, we thought of what is the best way of doing our project. Of course, the best way is to be able to provide a coherent single picture, but with all of the components of the study embedded within. And we saw the city resilience framework that was provided by Rockefeller and Arup in 2015. But we also recall the local governance performance management system, which is being used by DILG to enable local governments, municipalities, and cities and provinces to do a self-assessment of where they are in terms of inputs, in terms of process, and in terms of outcomes. And it's a very good methodology. And they also use mandalas, these displays that encapsulate for us the big picture as well as the macro, micro, and meso elements. So we decided that we're going to do this. And so we developed one. Of course, we first tried to come up with a definition of what a science city is for the Philippines. So there is no definition. So we came up with our own. And maybe this is one of the contributions we have to the discipline of building science cities is we have a sacrificial concept of a definition. A Filipino science city is an inclusive urban space that maximizes for its residents the collective resources, capabilities, opportunities, and synergies for attaining high living standards through the purposive and sustainable deployment of science, technology, and innovation. And so you can see here that the main keywords are inclusive urban space and collective resources, capabilities, opportunities, and synergies, and purposive and sustainable deployment of science, technology, and innovation. Okay, so we have that definition, and using that, we developed a Filipino science city model for describing, comparing, evaluating, and prescribing science cities. So we say a candidate city can be described and evaluated as a southern hemisphere with 2 dimensions. So here, the 2 main dimensions we have are the society readiness and the governance readiness. So we're talking about the people and the governance that provides the strategy, structure, and systems. And so we now have 2 phases. One is looking at the city readiness as a whole, and on top of this, the science city readiness. So just for society, you have the generic city readiness, and then you have the science city readiness of the people. And then on the government side, you have the generic readiness of a city to govern. And then you have on top of that, the science city readiness of governance. So you have society and governance at 2 levels, generic readiness or basic readiness, and then science city readiness. So what we're trying to do here is to show that for a science city to be successful as a science city, there has to be some qualities of the society that need to be developed, and there have to be qualities of the governance to be developed. And as you can see here, we have identified the dimensions on the society level alone. For generic, we have standard of living, stakeholder relations, stocks, sustainability, subsidiary orientation, and shocks management, 5. On the societal foundation, science city readiness of the population, we have science and technology attainment, science and technology culture, scale and scalability, smart city capacity, and societal sustainability. And if you look at the governance, the basic ones are strategy, systems, structure, staff, skills, style, and shared values, which many of us here will recognize to be the McKinsey 7S. But on top of that, we look into the way in which there are convergent strategies, convergent systems, convergent structures, convergent staffs, convergent skills, convergent styles, and convergent shared values. The reason why we use convergent is because when we did a study of Muñoz Nueva Ecija, and we had a very extensive case study of Nueva Ecija, we found out that there are many players, especially research and science institutes within the city of Muñoz, and they were there precisely to help support the science city. And of course, you have the local government and private sector. But what prevented Muñoz to really be a science city worth its potential is that there is no convergence. Many of these agencies and the sectors are working in silos, and therefore we thought for a science city to work, there has to be a convergence of the government, private sector, community, the people, and the science and technology facilities in science and technology mode, especially in the science and technology area. So, which is why if we wanted to look at the readiness, you have to look into the existence of convergence. And convergence here, as you can see here, it's not only strategies or visions, it's about systems. Is there interoperability? And are the structures connected with one another? Are there joint meetings? For instance, is there exchange of facilities and manpower and so on? So that is our idea. And when we put all of that together, so you can see here different levels. So the outer level will be the generic and the the science-oriented society, and then the second level, inner level, will be the generic and science city-oriented governance, and then the third level will be a summary of the science and a summary of the governance, and the one in the center will be the overall score, science and science city readiness of a candidate science city. So that was our idea. It's a descriptive, but it is also an evaluative framework. And of course, we are looking at this as a major contribution of our study to theory building and methodology in looking at our local governments and their development. And to cut our story short, we have this diagram which shows the result of our study. And dark green is very high, green is high, orange is medium, I'm sorry, yellow is medium, orange is low, and red is very low. So we have here an evaluation of all of these segments of our model based on our data, the documentary data that we generated, the workshop that we were able to do, and the interviews and surveys that we were able to undertake. But these are perceptual based on the group or the project team evaluation. It is our interpretation of these levels based on the data that we have generated. And of course, they are like hypotheses, right? But just to say that all of these were based on the data that we were able to generate, and we calibrated our perceptions through discussions. Okay, anyway, let me now just give you the data that we were able to generate that became the basis of this perception. So we did an FGD with Ubay just before the lockdowns that prevented us to do the field work. But we brought our entire team to Ubay, and we had a multi-stakeholder workshop at the municipio, and we had government, provincial, we had agencies, we had private sector, we had communities, and academe there. And so these are we had 41 attendees, and these are the people that we had there. And basically, we did a SWOT analysis, and we used the McKinsey 7S to structure our discussions. And these are the data that we get. Strengths: strong presence of government agencies in Ubay, DA, BIFAR, DepEd. Number two, competitive educational system, special assistance classes, special science classes, alternative learning systems, SPED. Oh, they even have madrasa education because they have Muslim population there in Ubay. Then you have the Ubay National Science High School. They say they have highly skilled staff, existing research and development stations and laboratories, presence of science research specialists. They have a good road network, and they have a desirable peace and order situation. So those were the strengths that were identified in the workshop. On the other hand, the weaknesses they identified were underdeveloped basic infrastructure, water, telecommunications, internet connectivity, road networks. Key development plans is still work in progress, meaning local development plan, CLUP, poor maintenance, upgrading of existing research stations and laboratory equipment, unstable development programs due to lack of synergy among sectors and frequent leadership changes. So you will see that some of these are at cross purposes and they're not consistent. But these are the perceptions coming out of the discussions. We used participatory workshop methods here, and people used meta cards and colored sticker dots for voting. The opportunities they identify to be the establishment of a community college, which they want to have to do because they don't have a city community college, a new telecommunication company investing in Ubay, abundant marine resources, college tertiary education offer technical vocational courses accredited by TESDA. TESDA will soon have a training center in Ubay, construction of new airport. Yes, they have an airport. There are only two airports in the whole of Bohol, one in Tagbilaran and one in Ubay. Possible funding sources from national government, international funding sources upon submission of proposals. The threats are climate change. Farmers sell their agricultural lands for commercial purposes due to rice tariffication law. That seems to be a big ticket item. High poverty incidents in coastal barangays and fire hazards in congested areas and forest fires. So that is our initial scanning with a multi-sectoral workshop. And we did conduct surveys. We had a survey for community members. We had 31 respondents. We had survey or key informant interviews with barangay captains. There were 15 of them. We had the FGDs with business sector or key informant interviews, 35 of them. And because of the specific strategic role of the Ubay Rotary Club, we also had 14 members of them. So a total, we had 95 respondents. And by the way, when we did this, we always try to get these sectors represented. And this is part of a methodology that we have developed as part of our work in transformative urban resettlement when in our work with informal settlers in Metro Manila. So we always look for women, men, youth, senior citizens, PWDs, LGBTQs, and if there are ethnic groups, we add them. So we try to represent these segments. And just to show you the uh, the sources of income, well, this gives us an idea of what are the businesses that we have there in Ubay. And so you have beauty products, motorcycles, drugstores, banks, convenience stores, restaurants, the usual thing, welding, bakeries, and so on. Yes, but when you look into the respondents' poverty self-rating, and where blue is poor and red is not poor, you will see that as far as the community members are concerned, that there is a big gap between the poor and the not poor. When you look at the barangay captains, it is still majority of them are poor, and there are a lot of them that are not poor, but it's almost like 50-50. When you go into the business sector, it begins to reverse, where the poor are a smaller proportion, but they are not quite so small compared to the not poor. And here you will see that the Rotary Club may be the creme de la creme of the private sector. This is where you will see that the poor is less than 1/3 of those who are not poor, the better condition. But this gives us a snapshot of the inclusiveness situation in Bohol, which of course a science city is what we want to use as a mechanism for changing all of that. Now, reasons for being poor. Community members say, sakto lang ang kita sa gastos, mahal ang bilihin. Meron pang anak na nag-aaral. Iisa lang ang naghahanap buhay, walang ibang pinagkakakitaan. Nawala ng kita dahil sa COVID. Okay? And there are just 4 of those, but we understand them to be the main ones. Barangay captains, maliit ang kita ng pamilya. Business sector, empleyado lang, hindi kami may-ari ng business. Of course, that's for the majority of them. But of course, for the owners, it is the pandemic that has hurt them. As for the Rotary Club, they think they're just being modest about their wealth and conditions. Now, perceived problems of Ubay. Well, just to show you the differences, I cannot go into this one at a time. But for the community members, the big ticket item there is unemployment. Okay, then you have pregnancy and you have other things. For the political problems, we divided the problems into the political, the economic, the sociocultural, the technological, and the legal. So you can see there big implementation of laws, internet for technological, and so on. And then environmental, you have solid waste management, and so on. We also ask the business sector the same question. So you have a view of the problems from the point of view of the community, the barangay captains, the business sector, and even the Rotary clubs. And who can address these problems? Okay, when you ask them that question, of course, the community members, you will see there that they say, oh, the government, the LGU, the DTI, the DOST, SMART, which is about the telecommunication, DPWH. So you are talking about institutions here. They do not quite identify themselves as a possible source of the solutions. And for the barangay captains, you have more or less the same thing, the business sector, and the Rotary Club of Ubay will have some nuances there, but they are basically talking about institutions, and they don't talk about the community itself and the people as being sources of the solutions, which might be one of the things that need to be changed, the kind of attitude towards self-help, mutual help, and institutional help, or the principle of subsidiarity. Who can help address these problems? The same thing you have there. And then what is Ubay proud of? They tell us about tourism and so on. And then indicators of inclusive development in a community. So what are the resources? So they talk about connections, livelihood, hospitals, facilities, and so on. Anyway, we have all of these in a lot of tables, but we cannot show them here. And what are the preparations for Ubay becoming a science city? They say change attitude, cooperation, research centers, boost tourism, unity, support local government plans, Ubay nons to pay tax, scientific growth. Oh, potable water is one of their main problems, and I think that's what's holding them back. And because we used Muñoz, it being a formal science city, and Los Baños being a de facto science city because of its number of research institutions and even the professionals there, we did a comparison, and we are using here the city and municipality competitiveness scores that was developed by DTI, just to give us a sense. And in economic dynamism, of course, we have Los Baños having the highest score, and then Muñoz and Ubay being lower. And then in government efficiency, of course, again, it's Los Baños on top. But Ubay and Muñoz are not so different when it comes to government efficiency. And our insight here is because Muñoz, while it is a science city, has not really actualized the kind of potential that it has as a science city, mainly because of some governance and strategic weaknesses. When it comes to infrastructure, Muñoz is the highest. Los Baños is 5.3, but Ubay comes out to be not too high, but higher than Los Baños. So these are data that are provided to us by DTI. When we ask the people about their life conditions, I think this is the poverty rating that I was talking about earlier. Now, the Science City of Muñoz Nueva Ecija, as I said, we looked into it because we want to get some insights. And so these are some of the insights we get. And these are important. First, science cityhood is at present promoted primarily as a political rather than a strategic local, regional, and or national development agenda. Lack of strategic science city direction setting, planning, and systems building limit effective engagements and contributions among the science community, public, private, and civic sectors. After the Science City establishment, national government engagement in science city development waned. Interoperability among science community, LGU, private sector, and civil sectors has yet to be effectively established. There is no strategic framework for STI and R&D engagement and collaboration in place. Current city governance structures does not have S&T and R&D dedicated unit, personnel, and budget. So that is what we found there. And from the sociocultural dimension on the people side, priming an area for science cityhood is a long-term structural and social engineering agenda more than a branding science city development entails. Embedding science-oriented values, approaches, mindsets, and competencies into governance and across sectors. Cityhood, science cityhood transition process engage the process of Muñoz passively rather than actively, primarily during consultations and plebiscites. Cityhood and science city agenda setting and decision making were mainly driven, shaped by local officials and science city member agencies, but not enough of the people. Anyway, we have others here. We have key planning insights and key legal dimensions. And we also cite the case of Los Baños, which is, it's not a city, but it has the status of a special science and nature city of the Philippines. And of course, science city characteristics. We are talking here about the presence of higher learning and research institutions, population engaged in science and technology and R&D activities, and then CSOs such as the Los Baños Science Community Foundation, Incorporated, and so on, and multi-sectoral program partnerships. It's a mature city, science city, more mature than Muñoz, but it does not have the legal status as a science city. Okay, and then here we did some comparisons over the competitive advantage of Ubay, and we were, as I've said, comparing the rankings. And so we go back to the mandala. So what we're saying is that we have this picture of the readiness of Ubay. Yes, it is ready to be a science city based on the legal requirements, and compared to the legal requirements that were hurdled by Muñoz. But we also find that there are a lot of strategic factors that go for the Ubay becoming a science city. And here we have answers to the questions that we posed. Strategic alignment. The transformation of Ubay into a science city is consistent with the national strategy for promoting science and technology, as shown in the following strategic documents: Ambition 2040, Philippine Development Plan, the Science and Technology Innovation Programs of the DOST, DILG, DTI, things like Science for the People, right? That is championed by our present Secretary of DOST. And then when you look into the legal requirements, the population and the land area of Ubay is the biggest population. And we have comparative tables here showing Ubay in relation to actual cities, and we will find that they meet the requirements. Now, a science city of Ubay will enable it to play a major role in the development context of Bohol and Region 7. Bohol is an island province with only one city at the western end. Another city at the eastern end would help create another growth center for the island. The Science City of Ubay will help facilitate and consolidate a Region 7 economic and tourism network. Ubay is adjacent to Region 8, and if developed into a city, will foster inter-regional transactions and cooperation between Region 7 and Region 8. On the other side, you will have the Visayas State University, and there can be synergy there. Ubay will be a key outpost and node for national research institutes. In other words, if you are thinking about a network of science institutes across the archipelago, then this will be an additional node that will make that more of a reality. Now, the multi-level strategies, what development and governance strategies are needed to be undertaken at the municipal, district, provincial, and regional levels to pursue and actualize the vision of Ubay as a science city? And here we can already identify specific strategies that can be adopted and used by government, like smart city strategies, connectivity, mobility, knowledge management, competitive city strategies, business, entrepreneurship, innovation, sustainable city strategies, futures and resilience. Note the SDGs and the work of the Future Earth Philippines, for instance, inclusive city strategies, socioeconomic mobility, and participatory governance strategies. Here we were talking about the principle of subsidiarity, self-help, mutual help, all being promoted by government. And finally, we have 15 pillars of the Ubay strategy. Pillar 1, Science City Development Council. There has to be a structure that is going to manage the science cityness of Ubay. Pillar 2, there has to be a science and technology investment development plan. Pillar 3, there has to be a local government budget for S&T and research development. Pillar 4, there has to be a multiversity system, a science seeding system. There can be a single facility with co-location of different universities contributing their most relevant programs. So even within a year or 2 years, you can co-locate 5 universities with relevant programs in just say a facility. And there is an excellent new building in Ubay, which is meant for disaster risk reduction and management. But it has enough classrooms that you can come up with 5 universities holding different programs there. So you can actually have this pillar 4 immediately implemented. Pillar 5, comprehensive development plan. Pillar 6, comprehensive land use plan. You cannot skip these even for a science city. 7, strategic partnership and information, education, and communication action plan. Pillar 8 is a regional science outreach system. It should not just be Ubay. You have to feed Ubay with a larger input outreach network. Pillar 9, sustainable development goals, regional strategy. Pillar 10, a legislative agenda oversight. Pillar 11, interlocal cooperation and engagement. For instance, Ubay with the neighboring towns, there has to be some idea of how the citizens of Ubay will drive also the development in the surrounding local governments. There has to be a Pillar 12 foresighting and backcasting program, which will look into foresight and scenarios. Pillar 13, engagement in national priority development programs. Pillar 14, city competitiveness program. And Pillar 15, city participation program. The idea here is not to say all of these things need to be done, but what we are saying is that there are enough initiatives and there are enough existing platforms at the national government level and at the regional level so that we can drive a more purposive science city development for Ubay. So the kind of relative neglect that we saw in Muñoz can be avoided if we just proactively plan this and put this together in this bill that will create a science city of Ubay. And so at the end, we are saying that this particular study is a new kind of study that is being done by NRCP. The idea is to be able to aggressively put forward policy advice based on evidence. And I think we have done this and that we have come up with contributions to theory and modeling. And we have also contributed a process for generating data even under pandemic conditions. So we are going to, as required by the NRCP, write an article or so. And as you can see, we have a lot of articles to write and contribute this to journals and be able to share them with a larger audience. By the way, this particular project and its results have been presented in multi-sectoral forums, including a Future Earth Visayas workshop. And there were about 150 academics and local government officials there. So we have begun to share the insights of this particular project. So that ends my briefing. Thank you very much.